While Waylon Jennings conquered country music as an outlaw legend, his children faced their own battles with tragedy, prison, early deaths, and heart transplants that nearly cost them everything. From drug-dealing convictions that separated fathers from children to cancer battles fought in silence, the Jennings legacy carries both triumph and heartbreak in equal measure. Here's what really happened to Waylon Jennings' children. Terry Jennings. Terry Vance Jennings was born on January 21, 1957, when his father Waylon was just 19 years old and still years away from becoming the outlaw country legend the world would come to know. As the eldest of Waylon's 4 children with his first wife Maxine Carole Lawrence, Terry grew up during the most chaotic and transformative period of his father's career, witnessing firsthand the wild lifestyle that would both make and nearly destroy the country music icon. When Terry was just 15 years old, he made the life-changing decision to drop out of high school and join his father's touring operation as a roadie. What started as selling merchandise at concerts quickly evolved into more significant responsibilities, as Terry became the drum technician and road manager for Richie Albright, who was Waylon's right-hand man and closest confidant. This early immersion into the music business meant that Terry spent his formative years surrounded by the excesses of rock and roll touring, including the rampant drug use that plagued his father's organization during the 1970s and early 80s. The bond between father and son during these years was intense and complicated, with Terry later describing their relationship as becoming more like brothers than father and son. He was there for Waylon's highest highs and lowest lows, including the period when his father was spending as much as $1,500 a day on cocaine and amphetamines. Terry witnessed the toll this lifestyle took not just on Waylon, but on everyone around him, including the multiple marriages that crumbled under the weight of addiction and the constant pressures of fame. After years of living in this chaotic world, Terry eventually stepped away from the touring life and established his own path in the music industry. He founded Corban Music Group, a full-service management, consulting, and publishing company, and worked as a talent scout for major record labels, including RCA Records, where his father had spent much of his career. Terry's extensive experience at all levels of the music business from the ground up earned him respect throughout Nashville's tight-knit community. However, the most surprising transformation in Terry's life came through his conversion to Christianity. After going through what he described as his own personal rock bottom, Terry made a dramatic spiritual turnaround that completely redirected his life. In interviews, he spoke candidly about the moment he decided to change, saying, "Jesus, take my life and do something with it," and describing how things began falling into place after that pivotal decision. This faith became the foundation for everything that followed, including his eventual decision to write about his experiences. In 2016, Terry published Waylon, Tales of My Outlaw Dad, a revealing memoir written with the help of New York Times best-selling author David Thomas. The 272-page book offered an unprecedented look inside Waylon's world from the perspective of someone who had lived it alongside him. Terry's account was brutally honest, sharing stories that debunked myths while revealing the human side of his father's struggles with addiction, depression, and the pressures of fame. The book received praise from country music legends, including Willie Nelson, who called it a terrific tribute from a son to his father, and Dolly Parton, who expressed excitement about Terry's project. Terry used the memoir not just to tell his father's story, but to explore their complicated relationship and to address what he saw as misconceptions about the so-called outlaw movement, suggesting it could have been called the survival movement instead, because that's all the artists were trying to do. Tragically, Terry Jennings died unexpectedly on January 25, 2019, at the age of 62, just 3 years after his memoir was published. His son Josh announced the death on Facebook, writing that his father had lived an adventurous life and accomplished so much, adding that he was always proud to be Terry's son. Julie Ray Jennings. Julie Ray Jennings was born on August 12, 1958, as the second child and only daughter from Waylon Jennings' first marriage to Maxine Carole Lawrence. Unlike some of her siblings who would later find themselves in the spotlight, Julie lived most of her life away from the public eye, carving out her own path that took her far from the glittering world of country music stardom that surrounded her famous father. Growing up as one of 4 children with Waylon's first wife, Julie experienced the early years of her father's rise to fame, but she chose to build a life centered around more traditional pursuits. She found her calling in radio, working as a disc jockey at WHOG-FM in Fernandina Beach, Florida, where she brought her own personality and love of music to the airwaves. This career choice allowed her to stay connected to the music world that had shaped her childhood while maintaining the independence and privacy she valued. In addition to her radio work, Julie also spent time working directly for her father in the music business, giving her insider knowledge of the industry from both sides of the microphone. However, she was drawn to an even more grounded lifestyle and eventually turned to farming, working the land and selling produce to make her living. This choice reflected a desire for a simpler, more authentic way of life that contrasted sharply with the fast-paced touring and recording schedule that defined her father's career. Julie's personality was strong and memorable to those who knew her well. Her brother Terry, who wrote extensively about their family dynamics, described Julie as the only person Dad was afraid of. A remarkable statement considering Waylon Jennings' reputation as a tough, uncompromising figure in the music industry. Terry revealed that their father had given Julie the nickname Froggy because when she got angry, her neck would bulge out like a frog, and Waylon would tell people, "Please don't make her mad. I have to deal with it." This vivid description painted a picture of a woman who was not intimidated by anyone, including her legendary father. Julie married Larry Burdett, and together they made their home in Fort Worth, Texas, where she was known as a loving wife whose greatest passions in life were her family and cooking. Those who knew her described her as someone who worked hard, played hard, and loved hard, embodying a spirit of dedication and intensity in everything she approached. Tragedy struck Julie's family in 2003 when her son, Taylor Ray Jennings, died in a car accident while returning home from work with his girlfriend, Stacy Norman. Taylor had been working as a bartender at the time of his death, and losing her child devastated Julie in ways that those close to her could see, but that she largely kept private, consistent with her preference for handling personal matters away from public scrutiny. The loss of her son was followed by her own health battle when Julie was diagnosed with bone cancer. She fought the disease with the same determination and strength that had characterized her entire life. But the cancer ultimately proved too aggressive. Julie Ray Jennings Burdett passed away on October 3, 2014, at the age of 56, leaving behind her husband Larry, her surviving family members, and a stepdaughter named Annie Burdett of Fort Worth, along with a granddaughter, Serenity Miller. Buddy Dean Jennings. Buddy Dean Jennings was born on March 21, 1960, and carries one of the most meaningful names in his father's life. Waylon Jennings deliberately named his third child after Buddy Holly, the rock and roll pioneer who had served as both friend and mentor to Waylon during the early days of his career. This connection to Holly was deeply personal for Waylon, who had been playing bass in Buddy Holly's band and had famously given up his seat on the plane that crashed and killed Holly, Ritchie Valens, and J.P. The Big Bopper Richardson on February 3, 1959, just over a year before Buddy Dean's birth. Throughout his life, Buddy Dean has been frequently described as his father's Spitting image. Carrying forward Waylon's distinctive physical features in a way that creates an immediate visual reminder of the Jennings legacy whenever he makes public appearances. This striking resemblance has made him something of a living connection to his father's memory. Though Buddy Dean has chosen to live his life largely outside the entertainment industry spotlight. Unlike his half-brother Shooter Jennings, who followed directly in Waylon's musical footsteps, Buddy Dean has maintained a more private existence while still staying connected to his family's musical heritage. He regularly attends his half-brother Shooter's concerts and tribute events dedicated to his father's memory, often seen wearing Jennings family merchandise and serving as a visible reminder of the continuing family bonds that unite Waylon's children despite their different paths in life. Buddy Dean established his home in Nashville, Tennessee, placing himself at the heart of the country music community where his father had made such a significant impact. This choice allowed him to remain close to the musical world that had shaped his upbringing while maintaining the privacy he valued. Those who know him describe his interests as refreshingly normal, including his passion for sports teams like the Dallas Cowboys and his enjoyment of television programs ranging from classic shows like The Dukes of Hazzard to more contemporary programming. However, Buddy Dean's private life was dramatically interrupted in 2019 when he faced a serious health crisis that brought him briefly into public attention. He was diagnosed with severe heart problems that required immediate and life-threatening intervention, leading to his need for a complete heart transplant. The procedure was performed at Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville, Tennessee, one of the leading medical facilities in the region and particularly renowned for its cardiac care program. The news of Buddy Dean's heart transplant was announced by various members of the Jennings family, who rallied around him during this critical time. His half-brother Shooter took to social media to show support, writing that Buddy had received the heart transplant and was doing very well, adding that amazing things were happening at Vanderbilt. The family shared a promotional video from Vanderbilt Hospital that highlighted their work with heart transplants, using Buddy's experience to draw attention to the importance of organ donation and the incredible medical advances that make such life-saving procedures possible. Jessie Coulter, Waylon's widow who had raised Buddy Dean as part of her blended family, also provided updates to concerned fans about his recovery progress. The surgery took place on June 18, 2019, and the recovery process that followed required extensive rehabilitation and careful monitoring, typical for such a major medical procedure. Buddy Dean's journey through this health challenge revealed the same kind of resilience and determination that had characterized his father's approach to overcoming obstacles, and his successful recovery marked not just a personal victory, but a testament to the strength of the family support system that continues to bind the Jennings children together. Deanna Jennings. Deanna Jennings was born on August 27, 1964, as the youngest daughter and final child from Waylon Jennings's first marriage to Maxine Carol Lawrence. From the very beginning of her life, Deanna chose a path that would keep her far removed from the public attention that surrounded her famous father and the country music industry that had made the Jennings name a household word across America. Unlike her siblings, who occasionally appeared in interviews, wrote books, or participated in tribute events celebrating their father's legacy, Deanna maintained what can only be described as an extraordinarily private existence throughout her entire life. Even as Waylon's career reached its peak during the 1970s and 80s, when the family name was constantly in the headlines, and country music magazines regularly featured stories about the outlaw movement her father helped create, Deanna managed to stay completely out of the spotlight. This commitment to privacy was so complete that very little information about Deanna's personal life, career choices, relationships, or daily activities ever became public knowledge. While her siblings, Terry, Julie Ray, and Buddy Dean, occasionally surfaced in media coverage related to their father's career or personal lives, Deanna successfully avoided any such attention. There are no known interviews with her, no public statements about her father's legacy, and no documented appearances at major country music events or family gatherings that were covered by the press. The extent of Diana's privacy becomes even more remarkable when considered against the backdrop of her father's massive fame and the constant media interest in everything related to the Jennings family. During the height of Waylon's career, when he was touring constantly, recording hit albums, and making headlines for both his music and his personal struggles with addiction, Diana somehow managed to live her life completely outside the reach of fans, journalists, and music industry professionals who were eager for any connection to the legendary performer. This deliberate choice to remain private suggests that Diana made a conscious decision early in her life to separate herself from the world of celebrity and fame that had shaped her childhood. While growing up as the daughter of one of country music's most recognizable figures certainly provided her with unique experiences and opportunities, it appears that she valued her anonymity and normal life far more than any potential benefits that might have come from trading on the Jennings name. The mystery surrounding Diana's life extended even to her death, which occurred in March 2015 when she was 50 years old. The announcement of her passing was made through the official Waylon Jennings Facebook page, which simply stated that Waylon's youngest daughter from his first marriage, Diana Jennings, had passed away that week, followed by the simple tribute, "Rest in peace, Diana." Even in death, the same privacy that had characterized Diana's entire life continued. As no details about the cause of her death, the circumstances surrounding her passing, or information about any surviving family members were ever made public. There were no published obituaries in major newspapers, no memorial services that received media coverage, and no public statements from her surviving siblings about her life or their memories of her. This complete absence of information about Diana Jennings represents perhaps the most successful example of someone from a famous family managing to live and die entirely on their own terms, away from public scrutiny. Tommy Lynn Jennings, adopted. Tommy Lynn Jennings holds the unique distinction of being Waylon Jennings' only adopted child, coming into the family during one of the briefest and most turbulent periods of the country legend's personal life. She was adopted during Waylon's second marriage to Lynn Jones, a union that lasted from 1962 to 1967, representing just 5 years in what would become Waylon's pattern of multiple marriages before he finally found lasting love with Jessie Coulter. The circumstances surrounding Tommy Lynn's adoption remain largely private, consistent with what would become her lifelong approach to staying out of the public eye. Unlike Waylon's biological children, who were born during periods when his career was either rising or at its peak, Tommy Lynn entered the family during a time when Waylon was still establishing himself in the music industry and dealing with the personal challenges that would eventually lead to the end of his marriage to her adoptive mother. What makes Tommy Lynn's story particularly intriguing is how successfully she has managed to maintain almost complete privacy throughout her entire life, even more so than some of her siblings who also chose to live away from the spotlight. While there are occasional mentions of Waylon's other children in interviews, music industry publications, or family tributes, Tommy Lynn has remained virtually invisible to the public, creating an air of mystery around this branch of the Jennings family tree. The rare glimpses into Tommy Lynn's life that have become public reveal someone who has built her own family while maintaining her connection to the Jennings legacy. She has a daughter named Waylon, whose name clearly reflects the family's musical heritage while adding a feminine twist to honor her grandfather's memory. This naming choice suggests that despite her privacy, Tommy Lynn maintains a strong connection to her adoptive father's legacy and takes pride in passing that connection to the next generation. One of the most notable public appearances Tommy Lynn has made in recent years occurred in 2021, when she visited Madame Tussauds Nashville to see her father's wax figure for the first time. The museum documented this rare public moment, posting on their Facebook page that Today, Waylon Jennings' daughter Tommy Lynn met his wax figure for the first time. It was a special reunion, accompanied by a heart emoji. This simple visit represented one of the few times Tommy Lynn's presence in Nashville or her ongoing connection to her father's memory became part of the public record. The significance of this museum visit extends beyond just a daughter seeing a representation of her famous father. For someone who has spent decades avoiding public attention, choosing to visit such a public memorial to Waylon's legacy and allowing that visit to be photographed and shared suggests a deep personal connection to her adoptive father's memory that she normally keeps private. Tommy Lynn's continued presence in Nashville, as evidenced by her museum visit and occasional appearances in social media posts by other family members, indicates that she has remained part of the extended Jennings family network despite the brevity of Waylon's marriage to her adoptive mother. This connection has apparently been maintained through the decades, surviving Waylon's subsequent marriages and his death in 2002, demonstrating the lasting impact of the adoption that brought her into the Jennings family more than 60 years ago. Jennifer Jenny, Eddie Jennings, Jessie Coulter's daughter. Jennifer Eddie Jennings, known as Jenny, became part of the Jennings family through her mother Jessie Coulter's marriage to Waylon Jennings on October 26, 1969. Though not biologically related to Waylon, Jenny was raised as his own daughter after her mother's previous marriage to legendary guitarist Duane Eddy ended in divorce. This blended family arrangement created a loving home for Jenny, but it also meant that her branch of the family tree would carry forward some of the most complex and tragic stories in the entire Jennings legacy. Jenny's background was already marked by the music industry through her biological father, Duane Eddy, who was famous for his distinctive twangy guitar sound and hits like Rebel Rouser and Peter Gunn. When Jessie married Waylon, Jenny found herself in a household where country music royalty was being made, surrounded by the creative energy and personal struggles that defined the outlaw country movement of the 1970s. The most significant tragedy in Jenny's adult life came through her son, William Curtis Harness Jr., who was born on May 31, 1980, and would later become known professionally as Struggle Jennings. The foundation of trauma for this family began early when Struggle's biological father, William Harness Sr., was murdered in 1990, when the boy was just 10 years old. This devastating loss meant that Struggle grew up without his father, relying heavily on his relationship with his step-grandfather Waylon Jennings, whose surname he would eventually adopt as part of his stage name. Struggle's path through life became increasingly difficult as he got older, leading him into the world of drug dealing that would ultimately tear his family apart. He was arrested on federal drug conspiracy charges and sentenced to 57 months in prison, a conviction that was based primarily on wiretapped phone conversations rather than actual possession of narcotics. The case highlighted how federal conspiracy laws can result in lengthy sentences even when no drugs are physically found. While Struggle was incarcerated from 2011 to 2016, his personal life completely collapsed in ways that caused him profound anguish. He was forced to watch helplessly from his prison cell as his children were placed into state foster care, unable to provide for them or protect them during this critical period of their lives. The situation became even more tragic when the mother of his children, struggling with her own addiction issues, eventually died from a drug overdose while he was still imprisoned. Struggle later described this period as the turning point that forced him to completely reevaluate his life and choices. He said, "I was sitting in a prison cell, and I was watching my family and my life and my world that I built completely crumble outside of the walls. I had completely no control. My kids ended up in foster care. Mother of my children overdosed and passed away. I realized there was nothing I could do to control what was happening on the outside. All I could do was control how I came out and who I was, and I was over it." After his release from prison in 2016, Struggle worked to rebuild his life and regain custody of his children, using music as both therapy and a way to share his story of redemption. His experiences created a powerful narrative about breaking cycles of addiction and incarceration that had affected multiple generations of his family. Waylon Shooter Jennings. Waylon Albright Jennings, known professionally as Shooter Jennings, was born on May 19, 1979. As the only child from Waylon Jennings' fourth and final marriage to fellow country singer Jessi Colter, he became the most publicly successful of all Waylon's children, following directly in his father's musical footsteps while carving out his own distinct identity in the entertainment industry. The story behind Shooter's unusual nickname has become part of family legend, with two different versions offered by his parents. His mother, Jessi, attributed the name to their shared love of Western culture and cowboy art, suggesting it reflected their appreciation for that aesthetic. However, Waylon himself told a much more colorful and memorable story, claiming that moments after the newborn emerged from his mother's womb, the baby sprayed a nurse before anyone could put on his first diaper. Shooter himself has stated his preference for his father's version, saying, "I love my mom, but I like Dad's version better. And I believe it's true. He didn't make stuff like that up." Shooter's childhood was unlike that of most children, as he lived his earliest years in a crib on his parents' tour bus, surrounded by country music legends including Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, and Kris Kristofferson. This extraordinary upbringing meant that he was exposed to the highest levels of musical talent and creativity from infancy, giving him an education in music that no school could have provided. By age 5, he was already playing drums, and he began taking piano lessons at 8 years old before picking up the guitar at 14. His musical journey took an unexpected turn when he moved to Los Angeles in 2001 to pursue his career in a different direction. Rather than immediately following the country music path that seemed predetermined by his heritage, Shooter formed a rock band called Stargun, which featured him on piano and lead vocals. The band released their album, The Only Way Up Is Down, and toured with acts like Saliva and Tesla, building a following in the rock music scene before Shooter eventually dissolved the group in 2003 to focus on his solo career. Shooter's personal life became the subject of significant media attention when he began dating actress Drea de Matteo in 2001. De Matteo was known for her roles in popular television series, including The Sopranos and Desperate Housewives, and their relationship brought Shooter into the entertainment industry spotlight beyond just music. The couple had 2 children together, a daughter born in 2007 and a son born in 2011. But despite their long-term relationship and shared children, they never married. After his relationship with De Matteo ended, Shooter found love with Misty Brooks Swain, a longtime friend whom he had met during his Stargun days when she was working as a bartender at the famous Rainbow Bar and Grill on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood. Their friendship eventually blossomed into romance, and Shooter married Misty on June 4, 2013, in a ceremony held in Joshua Tree, California. Throughout his career, Shooter has successfully balanced honoring his father's legacy while establishing his own musical identity, blending country with rock influences, and working with his own backing bands including the 357s and later Hierophant, demonstrating that the Jennings musical legacy continues to evolve and influence new generations of performers.